This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at something interesting and different. This is the Dell XPS 11. XPS, really normal, right? Not so much. 11.6-inch convertible Ultrabook, even smaller than most Ultrabooks, really, but yes, it yogas. That's a Lenovo thing, right? But here it is. Keyboard here, display here. Opens up flat too, but the other interesting thing about this keyboard is it's capacitive touch. It doesn't have movie keys. We're going to look at it now. Didn't I tell you this was a little different? We don't really often get to start out our videos like this, but here it is. Carbon fiber, carbon fiber. Yeah, it's a laptop too. Don't worry. Flip it over. 2.5 pounds. Flipping it over is easy. And what do we have here? Well, you can obviously lay it quite flat if you want. You can bring it up and look, it's a normal looking thing now. This is the Dell XPS 11. This is an Ultrabook, obviously a convertible, because you can flip this, you can use it as a laptop. You can use it flat out, as you saw, like so. You can do the tent mode thing, just like the Yoga. And, you know, you have some room for adjustment there as to how tight the tent is or not. And you can just use it in presentation mode, which I think a lot of people probably like. If you just want to use it in tablet mode, only you're watching video, something like that, you can do that. Very different from the Dell XPS 12, a little bit larger, obviously 12 instead of 11, which has the rotating display with the frame. We'll compare those in a little bit, but the design language is fairly similar. You get the metal accents on the outside, the magnesium alloy and aluminum construction, the carbon fiber. Very nice looking product. You look at it and you just want one. You say, well, that it just looks like a high quality piece of hardware right there. 2.5 pounds, like I said. It feels even lighter. It's just very well balanced. So it's very comfortable to use. And unlike the Yoga, when you're holding the keyboard, you don't feel it so much because this doesn't actually have clicky keys. This is unusual. The only time we've seen a capacitive keyboard really is on the Microsoft Surface Pro, the optional touch cover and touch cover too. So no, these don't move at all. They're touch sensitive and they are backlit, by the way, and backlighting is very generous. It comes on a lot, though it's a very big font, very high contrast. It's Dell's signature font, shall we say, at this point. They changed about 2 years ago to this. There's texture here, so these feel a lot like the soft touch keyboard deck, which is a good thing. So you can really feel the keys, even though it's a flat keyboard. Little shiny spaces in between. In that way, it feels absolutely normal. As you can see from the side, other than the molding, there's no relief because nothing moves when I hit this at all. It will make those Windows 8 clicky sounds when you hit on the keyboard, just like when you use the on-screen keyboard. And even though that can be kind of annoying after a while, you're probably going to want to leave it on because that's just really your only tactile feel. So Dell says this is not for those of you who are writers like I am and you write thousands of words per day sometimes. This is for those who want to enter passwords, URLs, quick emails, and if you're using it at desk height, like right now, obviously you would have the screen up, it's perfectly good, and I find I do okay with it. I'm not in love with this keyboard still, but if you put it down on your lap when you're sitting on the couch, for example, it just all goes to hell for some reason. I'm not sure why, but accuracy is just, seems like it was really designed to be used up high, sitting at a desk. I've tried to get used to this keyboard, and I know Dell really makes a point of saying that this is not for people who type a lot, but after a day of use, I really don't adore it. Yeah, it's there for things like entering passwords, but at the same time, because there's not a whole lot of tactile feel, and it requires a pretty decent amount of pressure. It's sort of like the Surface Pro Type Cover 1, or touch cover rather, that was available. That required kind of like a little more pressure than you might have liked. This is the same way. So sometimes you miss keystrokes, and I find even entering passwords, I do make mistakes with it. The good news is the trackpad, the Synaptics trackpad here. Thank God Dell switched to Synaptics trackpads. You can hear just a little bit of click, just the right amount, just the right amount of movement. Very, very responsive, very nice trackpad. Good job there. Again, soft touch keyboard deck over here. It's quite comfortable. The metal frame. It's just a good looking piece of hardware. And how about on the sides? We have USB 3.0 port. There's our charging port, standard Dell charging port. Full-size HDMI, our combo audio jack. Speaker grill right there. There's one on the opposite side as well. These are our volume controls. They put these things on the side, so if you're using it in tablet mode, you still have access. Power button is on the front edge right here. Glows white. And on this side, we have our other speaker grill, SD card slot, and another USB 3.0 port, and there's our lock slot. If you stick an SD card in, it goes in most of the way. I don't think it's going to make you guys too unhappy. It's not sticking way, way out. The hinges are a good size on this. They certainly seem very adequate. So let's take a look at the rest of the machine. Obviously, you can use this as a tablet, as a four-way accelerometer on it. You can have the Windows key at the top or at the bottom, however you see fit. That's a capacitive Windows button up there. 11.6-inch display, sharp IGZO, 2560 by 1440 resolution. That makes it a very bright, very colorful, obviously very high resolution, high pixel density display, and we'll talk about that some more in a bit too, but let's finish looking around the machine. The hinge is nice and smooth. It's easy to operate. It's not so stiff that you're fighting with it all the time, which I like. So here we have the usual XPS kind of metal cover over the serial number and stuff like that, and there's one screw under there. If you're adventurous and you wish to open this up, you undo that Phillips head screw here, a bunch of Torx screws around the edge, and you can take off this bottom cover. Carbon fiber, by the way. Inside, RAM is soldered on board. Right now this is available with 4 gigs of RAM, that's it. 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM. If you need more, sorry. Has an mSATA SSD drive. For the base model, you're looking at a Core i3. These are all Y series Intel Haswell 4th generation CPUs. Our middle configuration is 1249. It has 128 gig SSD and the Core i5-Y4210, which is a 1.5 gigahertz CPU. If you go up to the almost $1,500 model, then you can get a 256 gig SSD. Everything stays the same. It's an mSATA SSD. If you wanted to upgrade that yourself, you could. The wireless card is also socketed, but it is using Intel's Wi-Fi 802.11/AC dual band. That's a 7260 AC wireless card, which is currently the cream of the crop, so there's really nothing better you want to put in there, but just in case you want to change it in the future, you can. As you can see, it does have a reflective display. It will catch some glare when we move it around, but that's par for the course. 10 points of multi-touch. Touch works just fine. You know the Dell Synaptics pen that's available for the Venue 8 Pro and Venue 11 Pro is originally going to be available for this. Guess what? Dell says they did not ship it with the driver that would be required for the pen to work on this. That pen will not work. If you need pen support, you are not getting it here. I have a pen. I tried it. It does not work. Checked with Dell. They said, no, you ain't going to get the pen. So, there it is. The display really is what sets us apart from something like the Lenovo Yoga 11, which that has a 1366 by 768 standard display. Again, this is a sharp IGZO panel, very high resolution, 2560 by 1440. It also does really great on color tests. And let's take a look and see our results. So here you can see 98% of sRGB. That's about as good as it gets on a laptop panel. And 77% of Adobe RGB, so very good color reproduction, and also out of the gate, the factory calibration wasn't too far off. It was pretty darn decent. In fact, a lot of people could be happy to live with that if they're not working with photographs professionally or video. And that really sets it apart from the Asus ZenBook UX301, which also has a sharp IGZO panel, 13.3 inches. That one had way off color calibration, and calibrating correctly resulted in some red shifting when scrolling text. So, good job here. Now that kind of resolution can be a little bit crazy. Right here we have zoom set to our scaling 150%. Our icons are kind of small. Now I'm used to things kind of small, so I can live with that. You might find it to be too small. You can go up to 200%, which is the factory setting. If you go down to 100%, really, you got to have really great eyes, and I don't think most people are going to want to do that because this isn't only an 11.6-inch display. A lot of people are pretty happy with 1920 by 1080 on a 13-inch, so you get the idea there. Personally, I think it's kind of overkill on an 11.6-inch to have this kind of resolution, at least right now, given how Windows programs handle scaling kind of iffy. But that's up to you. It certainly is a sharp and lovely looking panel, and let's take a look at Adobe Photoshop, because I know a lot of you who are interested in higher resolution panels, well, you're interested in that. So for those of you who want to see, Adobe Creative Suite products do not honor Windows DPI scaling at this point, so look at the size of the menus and the size of our tool palette controls right there. Absolutely, really, really, really small. The better news is let's select something in a menu here. The actual menu items are a little bit bigger than the top of the menu is, the menu header. So these are more viewable. Yeah, it's usable. It's just not, wildly comfortable, but gets the job done. The nice part is here, as we look at our full image, is when you've got that high resolution, you don't have to look at such a small section of the image at a time if you want to be at 100% zoom. Now this is a shot taken with the 16 megapixel digital SLR, and we are still at just 33% zoom right now, so let's go in a bit more for those of you who work at 100%. So there it is at 100%. You can see the level of detail you have to work with there. It's quite good. So there are selling points for the very high resolution display, obviously. In terms of display brightness, we measure it with our Spider 4 Pro colorimeter. That's a hardware device that works in conjunction with software. You put it against the screen, you take measurements, and it registers at 300 nits of brightness. So that's pretty bright, but not stupendously and wildly bright. I have a feeling it has more to do with power management rather, because the IGZO panel is just by design very, very bright panel. One thing I did notice when we first set up this video cameras will capture the refresh on displays, and we had power display refresh turn off under Intel power settings, so it's not doing weird refresh settings, and I still had to turn off the additional power display management to stop the screen from rolling. So those of you who are sensitive to the refresh of the screen, you may have to do that. In terms of synthetic benchmarks, first we'll take a look at our Crystal Disk Mark results, which measures the speed of the SSD, and this is par for the course for an mSATA SSD. On PC Mark 7, our Core i5-Y 4210, again that's a dual-core 1.5 GHz CPU with turbo boost, though on the Y series the turbo boost is pretty limited for power management reasons. It scored 3938, which is very good actually for the Y series. The Y series is less powerful than the U series used in Ultrabooks, and that's about one of the higher scores that we've seen from a Y series CPU. Again, ours has 4 gigs of RAM, because that's your only option, and 128 gig SSD. W prime, it computed pi in 32.6 seconds, which is a little slower than we expected for raw CPU performance there, but nothing terribly bad. Geekbench 3, 1944 single-core, multi-core 3611. Those are pretty respectable scores there. Cinebench R15 for the CPU test, 147. So where does that put this guy? This is not as fast as Surface Pro 2, because that has the full Core i5 U series CPU, the same used in Ultrabook, so that's still always going to be the fastest among these tablets, but pretty much everything else is going to use this Y series CPU, so it's certainly capable enough. Office, photo editing, even some light video editing, really not much for 3D gaming. Even something like Diablo 3 at low resolution, you're not going to get great frame rates with the Intel HD 4200 graphics. That's a step down from the 4400 graphics that we see in U-series CPUs, but for everyday work it's going to seem incredibly fast, and it's faster than some of the Pentium tablets that we see. Like for example, the Sony Vaio Tap 11 uses a Pentium CPU with otherwise the same setup, 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM and 128 gig SSD. As you can see, this ships with Windows. This is Windows 8.1, and everything looks great here in the Metro UI. It handles scaling just perfectly well, so I'm not going to have any complaints there with how things look. And this is the News app, which tends to have really very nice typography. Everything looks good and sharp. The photographs are very attractive on this. So that anything in the Metro Live Tile UI is always going to look good in terms of scaling. So for those of you who actually do need to type and you care about that, let's compare that to the Dell XPS 12. So now let's compare it to the Dell XPS 12 here, which generally speaking is a bit cheaper. Funny that, but you still pay more for miniaturization. You can see it certainly casts a bigger footprint, 12.5-inch display versus 11.6-inch display. When they're closed, they're not going to look so different if you stack one on top of the other. There's about a pound difference in weight, 2.5 pounds, 3.4 pounds or so. Now, the XPS 12 does this. So if for those of you who don't like the keyboard facing out, this is how you do it. And then you can lay it down and use it as a tablet, or you can put it up in presentation mode. Now, if we close them up, we'll put the Dell back to its normal way, so we can close it up and have both lids facing out. Put one on top of the other, and not a huge difference in footprint for those of you thinking about how much space it takes up in your bag. So for those of you who want the more normal keyboard experience, in fact a stupendous keyboard experience, the XPS 12 is a good choice. Yes, it weighs more, but good keyboard. So how about battery life and fan noise? This does have a fan inside. I hardly ever heard it. Installing software, yes. Trying to export some full HD video, yes, you'll hear it. It's not terribly loud, so fan noise is not an issue. Carbon fiber on the bottom of the Dell XPS line has generally ensured so far that they don't feel hot. No strange sounds, no coil noise for any of you who are thinking about the XPS 13 and say that that's noisy. So a nice quiet machine, nice cool running machine. The Y series CPU uses less power. It runs on fewer watts than the U series CPU, but somehow it never translates into a whole lot more battery life. And we've been averaging about 6.5 hours on a charge, which is about the same as a lot of other Ultrabooks. Of course, you get a smaller 40 watt hour battery in here. It's thinner, it's lighter. So given that you have less battery to work with inside, that's not so bad. But this is not going to be running for 12 hours on a charge, sorry to say. Again, it's going to depend on what you're doing and your power management settings. That's with the brightness set at 50% and Wi-Fi on. This also has Bluetooth, by the way, Bluetooth 4.0 that's integrated in with the Intel 7260 AC wireless card. Currently, there is no 3G, 4G option, but since this is a full Windows 8 64-bit machine, or Windows 8.1, you can put a USB dongle in one of these USB ports. You can use your phone's mobile hotspot. There's ways. So what about the competition? Goodness knows there are a lot of 2-in-1 Ultrabook or sub-Ultrabooks at this point on the market. Even the XPS 12 right here. Obviously, again, I won't beat a dead horse here, but this is not for somebody who's going to be typing thousands of words a week. We know that, but it is more, shall we say, beefy feeling keyboard experience than you would get with tablets that have detachable keyboards like the Sony Vaio Tap 11 or the Surface Pro 2. Surface Pro 2 still has an advantage though, because you can get that type cover too, and that has movie clickable keys. Even the Tap 11's modular separate keyboard that kind of acts as a cover and completely separates because it's wireless, has movable clicky keys. So while Dell tried to offer a little bit more in about the same size package in terms of weight and give you this kind of what looks like a real keyboard here, the keyboard experience really isn't super duper superior to the Tap 11 or to the Surface Pro 2. Now obviously the Yoga 11, Lenovo Yoga 11, that has a very good keyboard. Lenovo makes a nice keyboard. For an 11-inch product, it has a normal keyboard. But for those of you who want the higher resolution display and the overall classier looks, higher end dual band Wi-Fi AC, this is kind of your more deluxe-o machine. So it costs more than the Yoga 11, but yeah, it's better. And the Yoga 11 refresh, you can still get that with a Haswell Y series CPU. You also might see it with the Pentium, which is noticeably slower also. So that's the Dell XPS 11. It's available now, running from around $1,000 to $1,500. Again, we have the mid-price $1,249 model, and it's unlike anything else. Let's put it that way. It's sort of like a Yoga, but definitely not. Really nice, high-class materials here. But the question is, can you get used to this keyboard? I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.